Kevin, you
This
can
is
go
the
by.
latest version,
This is the latest
1120. Here's the
Oh,
latest
thank
version,
you.
1120. Thank you for your help,
Okay.
because I was trying to remember. I don't want to do that again. Next time, put up on the screen. Make the
All right.
changes right
Aloha,
here.
good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Public Land Trust Working Group. Today is Monday, November 20th, 2023. It's now 10:01 a.m. I'd like present this morning are all of the members of the working group. Amber Kalua is here to provide technical support, as well as Kevin Chalk. I'm Colin Kippen, and I'm just moderating. The first item on our agenda is approval of meeting summaries for October 17th and October 31st. Amber, do we have anyone signed up to give testimony?
No, we do not.
Members, is there any discussion of these items?
Chair, I was not here for those meetings, but I have reviewed the meeting summaries, and if it's okay, I will define and vote.
Okay, thank you.
May I have a motion to approve those meeting summaries?
I'd like to make that motion to approve.
Is there a second? Amelia's chair. Lindsay has moved, vice chair. Trask has second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. All have voted in favor.
Aye.
Next, thank you, Don.
Hi, Don.
Thank you for accommodating me.
All right, moving on to the next item. Item number 3, further discussions and comments regarding the State Land Information Management System, SLIMS, the Public Land Trust Information System, PLTIS, the Department of Land and Natural Resources DNR reports to the legislature pursuant to Act 178, Session Laws of Hawaii 2006, and the report to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs on the accuracy and completeness of a report by the Department of Land and Natural Resources to the Hawaii State Legislature on public land trust receipts for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016 by NNK CPAs, Inc. in 2018. Amber, do we have anyone signed up to speak on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay, members, this item is open for discussion.
At the last meeting, we had a few questions for DLNR. And I think that Dawn said she was going to try to talk to her people and get back to us.
Yeah,
Okay,
if I may. So I did send to Amber on, I guess it was October 31st. And this is the email that I sent. At the last PLT WG meeting, I raised a concern with the draft letter, page 1, paragraph 2, requesting that all state agencies, quote, to provide information, data, documents, and maps to ensure that they have completely and accurately identified and reported to DLNR. My concern was based upon the request being redundant, as that was the purpose of Act 54, and the PLTS is accurate. Some of the members asked if I was confident that PLTS was accurate. I said, yes, I confirmed with Land Division that PLTS is accurate, as the status of lands includes a TMT acreage, land trust status. And so, you know, again, other agencies do rely upon this SLIMS, upon the PLTIS. It is accurate, it is used by others. So I hope that satisfies the working group members. But that was the follow-up that I had with the Land Division. Thank you.
Sherry.
thank you for following up, Dawn. I think that there's in the community and over the years, there's still a dissatisfaction with the PLTIS. I'm not an expert on something like that. And so it would be hard for me to say exactly what's what. And the dissatisfaction, I think, is sufficient that this was one of our assignments, was to determine the completeness and accuracy of the PLTIS. So I can certainly understand that the DLNR staff worked hard to create the PLTIS. I also asked, okay, so I don't think, I think in order to complete our job and make the report, that although we appreciate the response we got, I guess from my point of view, I can't really be satisfied unless an independent third party makes the review. Yeah, confirms it. And, there's still the outstanding question of the majority rule that was explained in the Russell Suzuki letter that we saw at an earlier meeting, where the trust status is determined by the percentage of land that is trust rather than a specific allocation within the PLTIS. So I think that I'm not saying this out of any disrespect or anything. I just think that there is a lot of criticism in the community of the inventory in its current state. And of course, it's not actually even called an inventory, it's called an information system. And then I also asked if there was a final report done by the contractor that DLNR hired to do the report. So is there a final report, and could we take a look at that? It might identify some issues. And then the last thing is, I think I also asked, maybe I didn't, but I think I did, to see if there had been any independent reviews that had been done of the PLTIS. When we did the financial review of the state agencies on the accounting side, of course, everybody did their best good faith effort from their point of view, each agency, of what they were supposed to report or not report. And our independent CPAs found that there was a lot of underreporting. And there was response to those criticisms, but having an independent outside person do it. We're not saying anybody's doing anything deliberately to hide or anything like that, but just that I think I don't think that, at least for myself, and I don't know if I speak for the other OHA delegates on the committee, but I don't feel that I'm doing the job that I'm supposed to do to protect the interests of the Native Hawaiians if we don't at least have an independent assessment of the PLTIS.
And if I may, Chair, just respond. And Sherry,
Yeah,
I understand. If we want to make that a recommendation to the legislature to fund that independent contractor to assess the accuracy of the PLTIS, got no objections, but I do think asking all of the departments statewide to provide this additional information, which was the Act 54, will be viewed as somewhat being overly burdensome. But if the recommendation by this working group is for the legislature to fund that, more than willing to support that, to raise a level of comfort by the community. Because I guess DLNR's position is, if people believe it's inaccurate, come to us with what you believe is inaccurate. Because it's sort of like going, we're being asked to defend the negative. We believe that this is accurate, but again, if the working group wants to recommend to the legislature to fund an independent third party review the accuracy of PLTS, that I would if that's the recommendation, I'd support that.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's.
And I do apologize. You're correct, Sherry. You did ask for a final report if one was done, and I'm sorry, I did not. I didn't ask that question, so I will follow up on that.
Okay, mahalo.
I just
Yeah.
want to share that I had the experience of speaking with legislators as recent as, let's say, 5 years ago about this very subject, the fair 20%. And their immediate reaction was, show us the inventory.
Mhm.
Without the inventory, they just did not want to speak.
Mhm.
And I do know, I think we heard from someone on your staff, Dawn, at the very beginning of our meetings, where we asked about the accuracy of the PLTIS. And the person said, well, we receive what they send us. So it doesn't really mean what they send us is accurate. I did hear also from people that have received monies that they look at our 15.1 million before we got the increase.
Mhm.
They look at that and see how much more we needed in the pot to make the 15.1 million, and they only reported what they needed to report. So
Mhm.
that's kind of not accurate also. So I think I kind of agree with Sherry that we need that independent certification that this is true of our inventory.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Chair,
if I
if I-
may, Chair, thank you. I also want to clarify, I think when our staff indicated that we only report what others give us, that really is with respect to revenue. DLNR does not independently assess the information that the different departments or
Mhm.
agencies
Or-
on the accuracy of their revenue reporting. But with respect to the accuracy of the PLTIS, I mean, again, they stand by it, but again, Chair, I'm more than willing if that is the recommendation by the working group, I think we'd support that.
Okay,
If I may, Chair, I think I see both sides of this particular discussion right now, and from Don's perspective, the accuracy or the information that's contained within PLTIS is an inventory of the asset itself. It's not necessarily the reporting of revenue that's generated on those assets, which I believe is another issue. But it begets the question on whether or not all of those land assets or all of those pieces of property are being accurately reported. So in support of what Sherry and yourself and Don are talking about, if there is an intention to go ahead and find an independent party to make sure that all of those parcels are being accurately verified and that it's being accurately represented, yeah, I'm in full support of that too as well.
okay.
Let me just suggest something, and I had mentioned it before, and that was that we've been trying to do this for a few years. We needed to get some help. So in the beginning, OHA went to NNK,
Mhm.
CPA. That seemed to work well. And then as we went forward, then you guys went to NNK, CPA.
For something else.
Yes, for something
So now
else.
they put us in conflict of interest.
Mhm.
We cannot hire them back to update their findings, for example.
No,
right?
but if we're both working with the same, if we're both working with NNK CPA and we're looking at a similar accounting problem from a different angle,
Mhm.
and we're not going to have a final answer for the legislature this session, so we're going to be continuing
Mhm.
into the next session, maybe we should start looking at NNK as a contractor that could facilitate the task instead of working for one side and the other that are at the table. And what I'm saying is that we need to get an independent report to the state legislature. They don't want to see it, but they're going to have to. We don't have a comprehensive inventory, even for the state, and we need it actually because the feds are using our land as well.
Mhm.
But I think, I mean, I just wanted to pause and say, is there a way that we can look at what we need to tell the legislature and already begin to move on it ourselves with the contractors that we're using instead of switching horse in midstream? Because what we have to do is actually look at the full inventory of the ceded lands.
Mhm.
The land, the submerged land, income and revenue, you know, and I'm thinking initially my idea about the report we'd be making to the legislature was a very different one than what I'm looking at now. We need to tell them that we don't really have a full and comprehensive inventory of the entire ceded lands, including submerged lands and other things like fisheries or what, and that we're taking this approach so that we can be there. You know, I don't know. I mean, I agree we need somebody that's independent, but what are they doing? We've gone to the same guys for a related purpose, but you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? I mean, I think that if we send out letters to the state agencies, then the next thing we're gonna do is send it out to federal.
Mhm.
And we're gonna send it out to
Yeah.
county. So step by step, we should be coming up with some kind of a comprehensive inventory for ourselves.
Well, we
You know what
should
I'm
do it
saying?
simultaneous,
Yeah.
federal, county, state. Then we don't have to be waiting and waiting and waiting. We send it out to everybody and see what we get back.
Well, I think that, I've used the PLTIS a little bit, I'm trying to see, is it accurate or not? But of course,
Mhm.
it's, huge.
Mm.
And I think that we need people with specific expertise. See, I don't even know if N&K's expertise
Me too.
includes
I think they're accountants.
inventorying
Yeah.
land. So I don't know if we need a specialized
be
kind of
right.
person.
And that was my assessment on the NNK
Yeah.
audit. The
Mm.
NNK audit really didn't look at
Actual land
the
record,
actual
yeah.
land
Right.
issue. They basically looked at the
Revenues.
revenue generated,
Right.
essentially the financial statements of these individual areas, and made that determination in terms of what was
Yeah.
allocatable.
Yeah.
And so it never really touched upon the issue. Well, are you accurately,
Yeah.
categorizing all of the land, for example, submerged land, all of these
Yeah.
other issues? That was
Yeah.
not included in the NNK report.
Right,
so,
at all.
yeah.
Yeah, so I just
I
don't know
agree.
off the top of my
We're talking
head.
about two different
Yeah.
services.
Two different
Yeah.
services.
Two
Land
different-
surveying or
Right.
Right.
experts
Right,
and the resources. Yeah.
exactly. So I
So-
just don't know. And then there's, some little subsidiary
I thought that
issues.
this was gonna cost some money. I didn't think it was gonna be a freebie on the top.
Well,
You know,
I asked Louis how much, and he told me that for another financial accounting
Yeah.
of revenues, maybe, I mean, he's just guessing
Yeah, I'm
too,
just
right?
guessing, but the annual comprehensive financial report of the state of Hawaii is about $250,000 a year. So,
Wow,
but
that's
that's,
pretty good.
and well, a lot of it is taking a look
I-
at the,
yeah.
Annual
you know,
report.
Whatever it
annual
is.
The actual annual reports and doing the verification.
yep.
So
I
there's,
see.
there's more. When you look at all of the effort that's associated with that, you have other accountants that are
I
putting
see,
things. and
okay,
So,
I see, because
but-
we paid 150 to N&K.
yeah,
So how could the 250 cover the entire stage?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
impossible.
it is a culmination. That's one
Okay.
part of of
All right.
that. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I think the harder part of this whole job is the land part.
The land part,
And
I
know
agree.
because I've worked
Yeah.
in it all my life and
Yeah.
I know what what it entails.
And as a
So-
finance person myself, I would say that, finance may not necessarily be the most appropriate, I guess, competency to make the determination on whether or not this
we're getting
is,
fair.
is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
legal interpretation on what is this category of land.
Yeah.
So,
You
so it is
know,
two different competencies.
when we looked at this when I first came into OHA, it was probably 30 years ago or something. At that time, we tried to suss it out, and what we had decided, this was with Frenchie them, what we decided the first step to do was to send the letters to the feds with the help of our Congress people to make the first request to the federal government
Mhm.
for the lands that they took possession of prior to 1959
Mhm.
under the Organic Act,
Mhm.
and for the feds, including the military, to give to us the maps and the data relating to the ceded lands at the time of statehood.
Mhm.
And the reason why we did it that way was because nobody in the state seemed to have any maps from 1959.
Mm.
But we also knew that the feds had held on to some lands. They were saying that it was coming over to us, but they were still going to be using it. And I think like Kaho'olawe might have been in there, or Makua Valley, or some of the Hawaiian homestead areas that had already been used for bombing.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? But at that time, when we started out and we were working with the state people, because OHA didn't exist
Mhm.
when it came into existence in 78.
Mhm.
And the state was struggling with it too. And they said, well, look, what we should do is go to where it began in 1959. And they were looking at it being much simpler because you had all these big military land holdings, even though they were going to give it back to us later. Like, you know, what's that place over here? All the lands they're holding, Kalailoa,
Mm.
and those kind of places. But that's what we were trying to do. They started out at the outset because they knew that there was lands that the feds were saying was the state, but the feds had been using it all the time, bombing it, so the state never had a chance.
Mm.
I mean, it's like Koho'olawe is like that. Makua Valley, and now years later, they give it back. And it's filled with bombs, and all the bombs they missed went right over on Pahe'ehe'e Ridge Hawaiian homelands. That's why they had to pull that homelands out. But you know what I'm saying? Maybe we're looking our records where there might not be comprehensive records, you know? But at one, we're saying we're going to ask that question anyway of the feds too.
Mhm.
Yeah. Aloha, Chair, if I may, this is Dawn. You know, I think fundamentally, I think all of you raise a really good point. And while I may believe that our PLTS is accurate, that is really the fundamental starting point, right? For all of us, it
Yes.
is having an accurate inventory. So I like Mililani's comment about, you know, if there's someone that we can agree to, so perhaps the recommendation from this group can be to have an independent contractor. And I would suspect it would be someone like a title guarantee, someone who can look at titles, who can look at land titles. And it took us a long time to do this. So I think it depends upon what our instructions are. It may be very helpful that the working group, these 6 people here have to, are the ones who approve the contractor. Funds are provided by the legislature and this group approves so that we're jointly agreeing. Because I like Mililani's comment about someone that we can all agree to. So, but I would suspect if we ask that person to do an assessment of all lands, we would not get that done during our lifetime. I mean, I think it's probably going to take them years. So it may be, but I think having an independent contractor doing some random checking or whatever instructions we give, but I do believe that that is fundamentally the starting point to ensure that OHA, there's an accurate inventory, and then the next step, looking at revenue. What are we requiring? But I think because if we cannot move forward, if there is a question as to the accuracy of the inventory of ceded lands,
I agree.
so, or,
Yeah.
all public trust lands. So if that can be our first recommendation to the legislature to at least get that started this year.
Mhm.
Because if we waited until we could get all the responses from the other agencies, it will take us a lot longer. So if that is like an interim report from this working group, it's not our final report, but an interim report identifying what we believe needs to be done to ensure that we can complete our task. And the first one is a confirmation on the accuracy of the inventory
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
seeking funds as soon as possible to get that done so that we can complete our work.
I
Yes,
agree.
I think that you talked about instructions to the contractor. So I thought that if we could get the final report, maybe even the contract that and the original instructions that were given and the final report, it might help us as a committee determine what kind of instructions we think are needed. But I also think that, as I've dug into this deeper, I've realized that we needed a professional in the field rather than maybe just a mere lawyer. So I think that, maybe before the next meeting to get a better idea, if we could get either the final report or even the contract or both, maybe that would help sort of start to frame what exactly it is the assignment would be that we would give to an independent evaluator, and then perhaps I don't know if there's ever been other inventories done at the state level, so that we could talk to a couple of people about, like, what is it going to be, somebody like title guarantee, or like for the feds, they can only use certain kinds of people to do land inventory, land surveying work. And so as a result, with the work that they're doing for DHHL right now, they have somebody from Oklahoma that they're using. So I don't think, no, I agree. We don't want to do that. We want to use somebody here, but we need to, I think we need to get a better idea of, could it be title guarantee or does it have to be somebody else? And maybe, then the other question I guess I have is, the process you seem to be describing, John, suggests something outside the normal procurement process. And I don't know what the rules might be on doing that unless you get a special legislative exemption.
May I make an observation? I think what we're talking about is really just two steps, right? The first step is, what do we want? What do we need?
Mhm.
And the second step, really, what Sherry was talking about, and Don, what you're talking about, is the scope. And the scope, I absolutely agree. I don't know how the legislature would vest this working group with the authority to define the scope of something like that outside normal procurement. But if you really work hard at trying to figure out what the scope was, that could be in the enabling legislation for funding.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Sherry, if that's possible to be able to define it that well, but I think you're on the right track, getting the previous contracts and looking at those and then trying to come up with the scope. And of course, what the scope will do is it'll just define the questions that with this group is having a hard time with, right? One of them is the question about the land. And the second is the question about the revenues coming off of the land, right? Two separate buckets.
Yeah.
But you can't make that determination unless your base is solid, which is the
Land.
question about
Land.
the land.
Yeah.
The last point that I wanted to make, which is still kind of circling here, is the question about just the ability, about the difficulty of anything that we would request of existing agencies to actually provide that information to us, because it is so complicated. And Don, you've done a really good job of saying that it might be just a burden that they can't even begin. Your agencies, and I'm not sure how that would play even at the federal level in terms of those agencies even be able to comply. So I think the answer to all of this is really to define what that scope is that Sherry was talking about, which to me is Sherry, is that something that we could take a shot at here that we could come up with and maybe embed that into a motion at some point, maybe at the next meeting? Have a motion for what the scope of that report should be?
I think it's possible, at least to have a draft by the next meeting. And I think that the other really critical thing would be to have some ballpark idea of how much. So I don't know.
I mean,
Louis,
how much the
how much to do an independent
contract.
review?
contract.
Is there a way? I mean, Did-
I think we could do some due diligence around, okay, well,
Yeah.
what would, you know,
yeah.
in a
what's the
broad kind of
scope? Yeah,
scope, right? Because
right.
if, you know,
Yeah.
people would say,
Yeah.
well, if this is your scope, I mean, if it's very small,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I think we should get two
Yeah.
figures. One would be the the whole inventory.
I would-
Okay,
Mhm.
what's that cost? And the other one would be at least, you know, however you do, where you don't do a full-on audit, you know, you do spot checks,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Did you, to make a determination of the,
But it almost begs the question where you would want a comprehensive,
right,
you know,
Yeah,
Right.
once and for all.
yeah.
yeah,
Because the
okay,
lands are not gonna go away.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Well,
Right.
no, but we did find accretions of thousands of acres. Every
Mhm.
time, Big Island is the one. Every time
Yeah.
we have an eruption, more seeded lands are created.
Mhm.
But you know, when I hear what we're doing, I feel like one thing we can do right now is move ahead with the feds. Is a request that comes from us to all the federal agencies to please disclose now to us at the time that statehood was imposed,
Mhm.
their federal agencies' maps, data, document, and descriptions of the property that had been held by the feds under the Organic Act and were turned over to the state as of the date of statehood.
Mhm.
We send out all the letters now to the military. Definitely, we had a lot of US military before, you know, all of that Pearl Harbor and that, to see if they can find their own maps and that, where what they say they turned over to us in 1959. They could start looking for that, and I bet some of it is even with the Interior
That's what I was thinking.
Library. We looked up there, and the Library of Congress when we had talked about it. But what I'm saying is it's just a request to the feds. In 1959, we were recognized as a state, and at that time there was a transfer of property that came through the Admissions Act, and it is the Cedar Land Trust.
Mhm.
And it's very comprehensive in there, including things like minerals,
Mhm.
you know. But I think that we could get them starting to look for theirs. Some of it did come back, some of it never did.
Well, that's
Like
why it should
Pearl
be
Harbor.
simultaneous.
Mhm.
Yeah,
State.
yeah. But I think if we send a
federal
request
taxes.
out, it will make sense to our legislators to tell them that when we began our inquiry, we did not find state departments that had had the benefit of a comprehensive transfer, anything, Department of Transportation, DOE, nothing. So now we're going back to that point, but we know we're gonna find some bad things they did to us.
So when we hire whatever company or entity to do this land search, I think that we should share with them what we already have, the PLTIS.
Mhm.
And I do know that OHA paid the University of Hawaii a sum of money like 10 years or 15 years back for an inventory. So they have something that they are calling an inventory.
Mm.
We had a specialized employee on staff here at OHA that was trying to do the very picky inventory of every single land. And he worked for years on this inventory. So when you said it's going to take a lifetime, Don, I know what you're talking about. But this person who no longer is with OHA completed 2 islands,
Yeah.
the 2
those
small
yes.
islands,
Mm.
you know. So this can be shared with that company also, so we can give them like
A
a
process.
head, yeah,
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
head kind of, to help, generate their work. So, so maybe they don't have to duplicate what's already
Right,
been
right,
done,
those
you
two are
know?
done, you're right.
Because they were done very meticulously, whatever we have.
Mhm.
But we put it all together and we give it to this entity, and hopefully it's helpful for them. But don't leave anything out, that work that's been done already, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a very good idea.
Yeah,
Uh,
So
You
if I
know-
may, Chair,
Yes.
if I can make a recommendation, because I think if one, and I apologize, Sherry, I did not double check with Land Division for the final report, but let me do that this week.
Okay,
Gather
okay.
from them whether there's a final report. Let me get from them, one, the scope of services, the contract to do the PLTIS, what it costs them at that time. So let me try
Good
to see if
idea.
I can get some background information so that we're not, as someone said, reinventing the wheel. And perhaps between you and I, we can
Okay.
come up with one, hopefully there's good information that we can utilize to perhaps begin identifying a potential scope of work, following what Colin is saying, and bring that back to the working group for some action. But
Okay.
I will work on getting information from our land division on that contract and whether there's a final report to at least provide us a starting point on what they did and who they hired to do that. And then I can share that through Amber. And Sherry, if you and I want to work on coming back to the working group with a draft of a scope of work, or at least an update on where we are in this, because yeah, I think that might be helpful in the next steps.
Okay.
so can we then decide to send out letters this week as a result of this week's meetings? And get the departments, whether it's state, county, or federal, working on their side?
And I think it makes sense to do it. My only, I guess, caveat to like, some departments might come back and say, well, ask DLNR,
Yeah,
right? That's because they're not land stewards per se, right? I mean, I think you're gonna have other departments, like maybe like DOE or somebody, or University of Hawaii, that are very cognizant of their land holdings, but other departments, like the Department of Human Resources, for example, they don't really hold title to anything, or neither does the Department of Budget and Finance, for example. So I think that there are, I think, nuances for a like sending out to all departments, and not all departments are going to be able to respond in the affirmative, I think, Chair.
That's good, and they can just respond in the negative, and then we'll just check them off,
Yeah.
at least, because there's quite a list of people.
well,
Yeah.
just back to the inventory itself. It's my understanding from the various discussions we've had so far, including information from the DLNR staff, is that because all the submerged lands do not have TMKs, they may not be included in the PLTIS. So would it be?
But Sherry, but we report whatever revenues we generate from submerged lands.
Yeah, I
we
know.
do report that.
Right, so I'm not talking about revenues, I'm just talking about the inventory, and it's not a criticism, all I'm asking for is clarification.
Mhm.
Would many of the submerged lands who would be part of the ceded lands inventory, are they not included unless they have a TMK? That's all I'm asking. If you could get clarification from the staff on that, just so when we talk about scope, we can address that issue at that time. Then I did have a couple of other questions. I asked for the Kaneohe lease. If you can, I'll send them back to you again. But there was a bid for that, and the board did grant the lease recently, and I just wanted to take a look at how it how it's set up and all of that. So I had two questions. One was that, and the other one had to do with the perpetual easement, but I'll resend that to you, okay? So, should I send it through Colin or should I send it to you directly?
If that's okay, you can send it to me directly, if that's
Okay.
okay, Colin.
Yeah, I think if you haven't, when an answer
Yeah,
pops out that
Right.
is something you want the whole group,
yeah,
it
right.
needs to be handled,
Right.
probably go
Okay.
through Amber.
Okay, well, just
Pretty
one more thing,
communicated.
John. Ryan and I completed, we redrafted the letter at the last meeting. And because we didn't do it on the screen and everything, so I did the best I could from my best memory. But then when I sent it to Ryan, he made a few more changes and everything. So I think he and I did agree on what the draft of the letter should look like from the last meeting. But I just handed it out. I'm wondering, Amber,
Can we send it to Dawn?
Yeah, I'm going to send it to her now. so
we're gonna send it to
we
you
are
right
moving on to
now,
the
Dawn,
next item.
okay?
Amber, that needs to be posted.
Yeah.
Letter.
And I'm gonna share it right now.
Okay.
You guys should be able to see on your screen the draft.
Yeah.
So did we, okay, we're gonna look at how much was
Mhm.
spent before to see. But of course, they had to put together, DLNR had to put together a whole computerized system. So I don't know if what it costs to set up the PLTIS is really gonna give us much guidance on what it might cost to do. I don't even know if you call it an audit of land inventory. But anyways, I guess between now and the next meeting, we can sort of look into it further. You don't have any specific land department at BNF, do you?
No.
No, just money.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess the other question is, I don't know, do we have a procurement specialist who can look into, like if it's a sole source contract, we know there's only one entity in town who could actually do the work anyways. Can we get out of the procurement code or? No,
I don't think
okay.
so.
All
Yeah.
right, okay,
And there isn't only one company in town, so
all right,
that's
Mm.
why. There's
Okay.
several escrow companies.
For example, I think a planning shop could
okay,
possibly do this in
yeah,
addition to like land title companies, this type
Yeah.
of work that we're talking
Mm.
about,
okay,
whether it be like G7 or something, they have
yeah,
in-house the
Yeah.
capacity to do this type of accuracy assessment as well.
okay,
Because what you're looking at is you're looking at the underlying, how the entitlements for the property have actually progressed over time, right? Who it's been entitled to and ownership, use.
Well, that's why I like the title companies.
Yeah.
Title guarantee is the biggest in Hawaii, so
Yeah.
I guess that's why it was suggested.
Mm.
So I know most people use title guarantee.
Yeah.
But there are competitors to
Yeah,
TG,
there-
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
To
but
the
Group
procurement
7A
point.
is not one.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not a title company.
Well, this would probably be an ordinary professional services solicitation, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And we may have professional services on our list.
Mhm.
I would have to check with corp counsel, but we have a professional services list so
Yeah.
that we don't have to basically go through the RFP,
Oh, yeah, like a pre-qualified
Yeah.
list.
pre-qualified. And we can pass it by the community, this working group and
Mhm.
see what, how they feel about whatever.
Who
Yeah.
submitted
entity.
already?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I think we're on item 4 already.
well, let's go back to the letter. Are we gonna send it out?
You sent it to Dawn, Amber.
And the, yes, and
Okay.
the letters up on the screen.
Oh, okay. Don, you got the letter?
Thank you. And you also share screening it?
Yes.
Okay, so we're now
Okay.
moving, just so we're clear here, we're now moving to item 5.
Thank you.
discussion Regarding requests to the counties and federal government for information relating to inventory and identification of ceded lands, public land trust lands, including submerged lands under their jurisdiction and accounting of the income proceeds derived from them. Amber, is there anyone signed up to speak on item 5?
No, there is not.
Okay, so that we can discuss the letter because that comes under item 5. Go forward. We have the letter up?
Yes.
Aren't we asking for the ceded lands? Full description of the ceded lands and the income and proceeds therefrom? You know that. That little tag that
Yeah,
relates to
excuse me,
the
it's item 4,
revenues,
too, item
The
4.
income.
Review
and-
discussion, excuse me, you're right. Review discussion and comments to draft letter to state agencies regarding the reporting made and supporting documentation available to finalize an accurate and complete inventory of the ceded lands and public land trust, including submerged lands, and 2, an accurate and complete accounting of the income and proceeds from the ceded lands
Yeah,
and the public land trust lands, including submerged lands under their jurisdiction. Okay, so that's a big ball of wax here. So we're not, item 4 and 5, I guess we've been talking about those at the same time together. Is there
Yeah.
anybody signed up for item 4, Amber?
Nope.
No, okay, could let's just discuss the letter which touches both of those.
I offered my comments the last session and
Mhm.
thank you for incorporating them.
Jerry, would you like to just summarize?
Well, I think that we've worked on the letter and we've gotten input from everybody. And when I drafted the letter, I tried to be very careful and have it follow statutes that were enacted for this particular purpose, inventory or revenue. So not, making up anything on my own particularly. So I think that it's pretty tight that way. I think we may as well give it a go and send it out and see what happens. And
Mhm.
presumably we would be getting information that the contractor could use. So I understand what Don said, but I still in favor of sending it out.
Well,
Amber,
Don
how many
hasn't had
pages
the
is this?
opportunity.
How many
Right.
pages
The less, yeah.
is this letter?
Letter is 9 pages
9
long,
pages.
and I think Don has a comment.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Thank
what
you.
I'd like
Yep.
to do is ask if there's a motion to adopt the letter.
Well,
as written.
I'd like to listen to what John has to
Okay.
say.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
thank you. I do have a
Amber.
question.
Can you take
Um,
that letter off, because we all have it in our hands.
But okay, is that
Okay.
okay, John, if we take it off the screen?
Oh, yeah. You could take it off
Okay.
the screen.
I'd rather see
And, you
Don's
know,
face.
I am going to defer if Ryan Ryan provided comments. I mean, that's what I get. I didn't attend the last meeting, so you snooze, you lose. That's all right. That's okay.
We know you weren't snoozing though.
I know, you're right. I wasn't snoozing, but I think at this letter, we don't have, how are you ending the letter? If anybody has any questions, because I think they're gonna end up all calling DLNR.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right. Well, you're asking my question,
Yeah,
which
so-
is slightly
well-
different than yours, but like, who's gonna sign the letter?
Well,
Right, we don't
yeah,
want to be running around to 6 different people to get somebody to sign. But you're right, who is gonna answer the questions?
yeah.
What do you think?
We should let's funnel it either to Sherry and
Oh,
Ryan, or Sherry and you, but I know you're so busy, Don. If you trust anybody from your 3,
Yeah, no, I trust them both. Ryan or Lewis.
Well,
Louis is
Um,
busy.
Lewis has to defend the whole state budget, so
Yeah,
I'm gonna advocate for him to not have to do it.
Thank you.
that's
So-
thoughtful of, I mean,
Okay.
Ryan, if you're okay, and I know we all have a sunshine issue. We, no more than 2 board members,
Right,
groups can talk at one time, but, because I am anticipating that some of our agencies will have
Yeah.
questions regarding this, and there should be someone with a consistent messaging. So Ryan,
Right.
are you okay?
yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay,
Do you want me to do it as well? So there's two of us.
That's a
My
good idea.
suspicion,
I
my
think that makes
suspicion
sense.
though is that the state agencies are gonna prefer to ask you,
Yeah.
No,
you know,
that's
just,
what I'm assuming as well.
yeah, so. I mean, I'm happy to put my
They already
name.
do.
All right,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then you can call Sherry and discuss the questions,
Yeah.
you
All
know,
right.
so that when we come to this meeting, we're in agreement and we don't have
And we're-
to
yeah.
Right.
hassle over it.
So
Yeah.
on exhibit, so I know that the letter
Yeah.
is 9 pages. However,
Yes,
we're taking out
5 pages.
the last
The
4
CCs,
pages,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
exhibit.
Yeah, yeah.
yes, we're taking, it. So it's actually only 4.5 pages.
Yeah.
So
You
we
know
need
what,
to
too?
have,
Could we also, Ryan, you know, on page 1, where we're saying the Public Land Trust was established by this act, I think we should at least put in there for people, the members of the Public Land Trust are, so they know. Because Ryan is doing a follow-up, but the thing is that they don't have to go and look up the working group and that, and they can see who we are.
Would that be
We've
in
got
the-
some
Somebody can
OHA on
draft
that.
that letterhead?
yeah, we should have a letterhead and the
On the
people will be
right
listed
side
on the
Okay,
left,
okay,
okay?
okay, good.
I think
okay.
let's leave the letter as is and include in the motion to adopt this letter as is and have it on, have somebody make up a
Public Land Trust. working group
letterhead. We'll
letterhead.
delegate that to
Okay.
the chair's office
Okay.
to do that. And,
You heard that, Amber?
and who will sign it on behalf of the PLT?
Should be
What-
probably the chair.
I
Should
would think
probably
so.
be the chair.
Okay.
Because we don't want
only have to
all of
change
us,
One signature.
right?
Yeah.
Is that okay, Chair, if you sign it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Good.
okay, so
It
that's
could be
good.
chair on behalf of.
And then I'll work with Amber, Ryan and I will work with Amber on which agencies it goes to, because I've
Mhm.
got, you know,
Very
3
good.
lists here, and some of those entities don't exist anymore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So I just included all of that to make sure we had everything. So now we have everything, but we have too much, so. Is that okay if Ryan and I make a final determination? I mean,
I
do you
don't see
object to
any-
the list? We could, maybe,
see
do you
any-
have an official list of state agencies at BNF?
Yes, we do. We can.
Can we
do
use
that.
your list then? All right, let's do that. Skip my list. And Louis will provide us with the official list of state
Perfect.
agencies today.
Perfect.
So departments and agencies.
Departments and agencies, yeah.
So what
Thank you.
about the feds? I don't see them here.
Okay, well, we didn't finalize the letter
Yeah,
to the
that'd be a
feds.
separate letter.
Okay.
I think this was step number 1, if we
Okay.
could get through this and get this done. So at the next meeting, I can bring back a letter to the feds and to the counties. Okay?
So
All right,
we're
so-
only acting on
State.
agenda item 4
Mhm.
right
Yeah.
now. We're not
Yeah.
acting on agenda item
Yeah.
5.
Right, we're just gonna talk about,
Mhm.
okay, yeah. Thank you.
And just for clarification, right, so departments, that's very simple. Agencies, we're really talking about those public bodies that have their own statutory agency, like, we're not talking about like the strategic industries division within DBED, but we
No.
are talking about like
Like
the
Aloha
high-tech,
Tower,
Aloha Tower,
high-tech,
High-Tech Development Corporation,
OTech, whoever runs that OTech. thing.
NELHA.
Yeah.
NELHA.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
okay.
that, okay.
Okay, so I'll make a motion. then. I move that we adopt this letter to be sent to state agencies that we have before us dated, the draft is dated 11/20/23. And we will add to this letter, a letterhead for the Public Land Trust Working Group with the list of the members of the group included. We will have the chair sign the letter on behalf of the working group. And we will use the list that Louis sends us
Mhm.
for the list of state departments and agencies. And by agencies, we mean those independent and entities that have their own lands or could have their own lands as
Mhm, mhm.
opposed to a department within an agency,
Yeah.
within a bigger department.
Because like one of the things is like the Hawaii Film Office. Hawaii
Yeah.
Film Office doesn't really maintain or manage any lands. It's
Yeah.
a branch essentially within the Department of Business Economic
I-
Development.
okay.
Services.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
This
Is
is
there a
just
second?
state agencies, not the counties, right?
Right, we're
Yeah.
just
Yeah, we're-
right,
Okay.
because we
The
don't have
counties
the
are not
letter
federal.
before us. I don't think we should be sending out anything that we haven't all seen and agreed to. So we just all move together. So we're just gonna do this for now. And obviously this gives a template for the other two letters. Okay,
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Don, aye?
Aye, thank you.
Unanimous. Okay, so the letter will go out.
okay.
Does that end the discussion for item 4?
Mhm. Is there any discussions for 5?
Can I raise a question about 4? We've had a very light conversation about the logistics of sending the letter out. There's also the question of what happens, to the responses, or if we get no response. I just want to observe that we haven't had that conversation. So we'll just, is the sense of the group that what we're going to do is simply put this out and see what we get in response, and then reconnoiter and figure out what to do next?
Well, the letter gives them 45 days.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I'm
we're taking them
assuming-
through New Year's and then we'll be bugging them.
Okay, all right.
But I think that,
Well, that's
uh,
not very much time. Maybe we should cut it to 30 days. So
No,
we gotta be in
No.
the legislature
No,
within
we-
2 weeks following that. When does the session open?
we don't have a report for the legislature. We're gonna basically just tell them what we're doing, the money we want and why, and,
So
we
we'll
don't
have
have a
an
report to do.
Okay, okay,
I mean, we can report that we sent
Yeah.
the letter out.
A brief
know?
report.
yeah.
Yeah,
brief
Yeah.
report. And then I do think though that you raised a good issue, which is where do the responses come? Do they come to the chair or do they come to?
Whatever the address on your letterhead.
All right,
the work.
That's
well, we'll
where
have
it's
to give
gonna
both
come.
an email and I think we should give an email address, shouldn't we?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
Yeah.
That
and
would
a
be
re-
much simpler
okay.
for people.
all right,
I mean,
Okay.
it's working group is administratively attached to this
Oh.
agency, OHA.
yeah,
So
so,
I mean, that would be the receiving,
okay, all right.
Entity.
Amber?
There's a PLT email.
oh, good.
Mhm.
So you can
okay.
list the
Oh,
PLT.
how about that?
Oh,
Okay, that's really great,
you're
okay,
Ahead of us already.
okay, all right.
All right, so are we done with the conversation on 4?
Well, we need to add to the letter, I'm gonna make another motion, add to
Okay.
the letter, the physical location and email
Yeah.
address of the PLT working group.
Yeah.
And instruct them to send their responses there.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I,
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Are we through with the conversation for 4?
Mhm.
Yeah,
All right, let's move on to 5. My sense is that the group, we already asked a question about whether there was anyone to testify. There was not anyone to testify. My sense is that we want to defer this item at the present time. Is that accurate? Item 5, we're deferring.
Yep.
Yes,
Item 6, discussion regarding methods to determine accuracy and completeness of current state agency reporting of income, and proceeds from the public land trust and current inventory of the public land trust as reported in the PLTIS.
We discussed it
I
as,
think we
Yeah.
discussed that. But
Mhm.
Amber, do you have anyone signed up?
No,
No. Chair indicates that we discussed it and we have discussed it.
Mhm.
All right, next. The next meeting of the
So-
PLT working group.
We really don't have anything to discuss until we get response from this.
Well, we have the scope, the conversation about the scope that was the discussion.
yeah, I think we have
Got it.
follow-up on, the audit of the inventory, the PLTIS. So we need to determine scope and we need to determine a ballpark number
Mhm.
that we need money from the legislature.
Okay,
And-
so you'll go give us a ballpark figure.
I can find a ballpark figure and I think the scope was Sherry and
Yeah.
Sherry.
Yeah, Sherry and Don, yeah,
Yeah,
County, federal letters.
and the
drafts,
county
right?
and federal letters.
To draft.
to draft and bring
I
back.
mean, we can
to the-
already work on those.
Yeah, we'll have something, but so
Well,
what do you
what is
think?
the date today?
Today's
20.
The
20.
20. I don't want to hold a meeting in the month of December.
Okay,
Because people are off on vacations and all kinds of holiday doings, so. The 45 days doesn't come until at the end of December, or the beginning of January, but
Mhm.
these workings that you folks
Yeah.
discussed can continue.
Mhm.
And then maybe we can come back the first part of January,
okay.
if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we can not freeze our brains during the month of December, but have
Yeah.
a more relaxed holidays. And yet still work. And we can call on each other, whoever needs whoever's help. Just call on
Mhm.
each other so that we can get these tasks done by the beginning part of January.
Yeah.
So the January calendar, Amber,
I'm checking with our other stuff on BOT.
I just want the calendar.
You know
I'll
what, how
pull
are
it
we
up on
gonna
my phone.
characterize this thing in terms of the funding? When we get down there and talk to Donovan and them, are they gonna say, well, this is coming out of your budget, OHA? I mean, we're pretending like we're gonna get a separate budget, but you know what happens down there? They go, okay,
Yeah.
is it coming out of your budget
Yeah, so
or
I think-
yours?
I think the
You know?
conversation about the scope is going to be really important in terms of a report to the legislature, and I think that needs to appear on the next agenda. A report to the legislature, because once we discuss the scope and the cost, then that will cue
Mhm.
up the conversation to the legislature.
Yeah,
So those things need to, we'll just add that on to the next agenda so that you actually have an agenda item that says a discussion of
Mhm.
scope, cost, and report to the legislature, right? So that in your next meeting,
Mhm.
you can discuss all of that, come to a decision, which will then the board, this working group can approve as their report to the legislature,
Okay,
which would cue it up, right? And that would be, you would be ready for something sometime in January. If we
Yeah.
set this
Right.
meeting in the earlier part of January before ledge opens, then
Mhm.
we could hopefully have that report to them, by February, right?
And I know
That's
how,
all good, Louis.
yeah, and I know how it works. I mean, I know how it works on the executive side, but right in the first couple of weeks of January, the legislature will be holding their budget briefings, right? And OHA will be one of them, and they'll be asking, okay, the activities that have happened. It may come up as a topic of conversation during those budget briefings.
Yeah.
well,
actually.
that's why my next question would be, how early can you folks meet in January? And what day is the preference? What day does the governor has his meetings?
Tuesdays.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
And it's the first or second,
Uh, yeah.
the staff meeting.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's every Tuesday at 10 o'clock.
Every Tuesday.
Yeah.
I thought it was only one Tuesday.
No, it's
Oh
well,
my
the one that
Cabinet.
me and Ann are in.
Cabinet meeting.
I'm sorry. Yes. The one there's a smaller one with just me and Ann. That's every Tuesday.
Oh.
But then the cabinet meeting is during the legislative session, they end up kicking it. So it does end up becoming weekly. Right now it's once a month. But during session, then it kind of kicks into a weekly, and it's normally on Wednesday.
Wednesday at 10 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. And how early can you folks meet in January? The first week or the second week?
Could meet the first week.
I can meet the first week
I can meet
on
the
the
first.
4th or 5th. That's Thursday or Friday.
Thursday or Friday?
Mhm. Yeah.
When is our first meeting in January?
I believe it's gonna be the second week of January.
Okay, so let's look at January 4th then.
Okay.
Morning or afternoon?
Morning if possible.
Morning.
Everybody's head is fresher in the morning.
Yes. And you
January 4th at
Breakfast
10
and
o'clock.
works for me.
Got that, Dawn. January 4th at 10 o'clock. How come I don't hear
Yes, Chair,
you?
I'm available. Thank you.
Okay. What do you want, pastries or sushi?
But then again, must be present to win.
Someday we're gonna have to have cool beverages.
Then the meeting gotta be at 4:30,
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, there you go. There you go, there you go.
and we can do that too.
When we complete our task, when we complete our
Yes,
task.
yes.
Okay,
So
That's it.
members, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So
So
moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you
Thank
very much. for your
you,
Thank
thank
you
you,
very much.
everybody.
Thank you for
Don,
breakfast,
Don,
Chair.
it's
Yep.
really funny.
Quiet,
Call
but-
me now.